So we're going to start with this word. Well, let's start with this. We have a verb root, cha. We write these long and low. I think that's sort of their natural state. And then things can happen to push them high or to shorten them, which will also push them high. So typically the three that we're expecting is long and low, long and high, short and high. There are some unusual things that can kind of flatten it all out, but we'll worry about that later. So cha is to eat, right? So this has to do with eating. There's some verbs that we can build off of this cha. But one of the things that we can do is we could say at cha. And so this is really interesting to me because this could be a verb. And in this case, there's a couple of things that we're not hearing. And what, anybody have any ideas what these two things might be? The double zeros.
Subject and classifier.
Yes. So this is going object, subject, zero group, classifier. Cha. Well, we usually write like that with a little number 1. So this is the root. So like we should have an object, we should have a subject. And so atcha would be, this would be they, singular they, and this would be the classifier. It's a minus, it's also in its natural state, which is minus I, minus D. It's just a 0. It's what it's always, it's what it's going to be. Unless we're talking about happening, then it will push it to this, right? So we could have atchwacha or atwucha, and that's where that's going to happen. It's going to trigger that. So we do have at as something. So this is a 4th person non-human pronoun. It's pretty common. We'll see it around. This can change to cha. So in that case, you'd have at cha cha. I am eating something. I'm just eating, right? At icha, you are eating. At tucha, we are eating. At yecha, y'all are eating. Hasatcha, they all are eating. At ducha, people are eating. So these are the ways that that verb could change. But this verb, it goes, I have to bring my lamp in. So this can also, so we have this, and when things become nouns, there's different processes for them to do that. This is one where this is the noun. You just smash them together. It's exactly the same as they are eating. Maybe there's a little bit of a gap. Atcha, they are eating. Atcha, food. So it comes out a little bit faster. So this is a noun, food. So we can add a plural marker, and then we can add this little marker. So these things combine means littles of them, right? Kitch-kisani, little dogs. Douche-kisani, little cats. Tzik-kisani, little black bears. And in this case, atcha-kisani. But what happens with this short, high ending of a noun, if you put a suffix on there, it should get pushed long and low. So atcha-kisani is snacks. So that works for anything. Like you got some little snacks you're gonna bring, a bag of chips or dried apples, whatever you're snacking on, atcha-kisani. You could put Kate in front of it, and that would be a little dog treat. So it's getting kind of giant. So then you'd have Kate atcha-kisani. We'll try different. But that's how you'd say snacks. So that's one thing as you sort of get to those things. Because it has this sani on there, it doesn't need a possessive suffix if you put something in front of it. So that could be dog treats, that would work. These could be my snacks. This could be your snacks. This could be their snacks. It could be our snacks, y'all's snacks. Yeah, all them all's snacks. Any questions about that? Yeah. We'll put it, drop in the chat. Okay. So let's get back to this cooperative translation exercise. So we have this phrase, or this is like a complete kind of little speech. Okay, I'll fix that in the later one. So hold on. So let's go kind of line by line and just tell me things that you see, and we will look up the other things. So one way to do work like this is just to sort of put a sentence on one side and have a blank on the other side. Anybody, can someone read this sentence for me?
Linget ayu ye and a cage ye ide cup quoiton.
Sheesh. Anything y'all are seeing, recognizing?
Shinget, that is thus, then I get lost. You plural, towards you plural. I am going to speak.
Yeah, okay. So one thing I would do with something like this, so one step is you can sort of go and you can like look at all these parts. Okay, I see this part, I see, there's something right there. Then I see these parts, okay. Then you sort of isolate this and start working with it. Another way is you could sort of block it out. Like, so if I were to block these things out, I would say, here's all the sort of parts, and in terms of how I think they would go together, because they work together to create meaning. Then a next step to help you see it is I could say that's klingit, that's and you, that's yay. And now here's all the parts to the verb. I will pull this part for you so to help. So you're gonna have ya, na, 0, 0, ha, ch. Make that a little bit bigger. And then we've got ye, day, and then and this one, let me make some room for this one. So this is a future, and to help us sort of see what futures generally look like, it's always going to have ga, ka. Those three things will be right in a row, right in that same spot, to show you that it's a future verb. So that means if there's any thematic stuff, sh, ya, ka, anything like that, it's going to go right here. Then you're going to have ga, ka. Then you're going to have, in this case, cha for I. classifier will always be in its natural state, minus I. And then you get Tom. Maybe after the break, I'll go get my lamp. It's just silly. Okay. So this is it sort of pulled apart. So then we can sort of go through and we could say Llingit, which I would say, this could be person, human, it could be human, or it could be a Tlingit, like we could write it in, we could write that as Tlingit or Llingit with the idea that, you know, like a Llingit thing, Llingit hiti, a Llingit house. Ayu is, you know, that way over there. And then we can, these ones with the aya and the awe and the ayu, when we're doing translation work, sometimes we come back and say, well, we'll just sort of ignore it because it might be just serving a kind of a function in terms of the timing. This one, I'm going to tell you a couple of things that are going on here. This na and the ch are working together. They're tag teaming here. So that means every verb has a certain conjugation class, 0, na, ga, and qa. If you're going to throw this ch on the end, which is going to say it always happens, always, then the conjugation prefix will be activated, right? It's there. It's usually turned off. We're going to turn it on in command form, and you can turn it on in this habitual form. So a person always, and we're looking for ya, 0, ka, which in a perfective would hear as ye ya wa ka. In a command would hear it as ye ya na ka. Has anybody heard either of those?
Yes. Ah.
And what might they mean?
Yanaka. Suya yanaka. Say it again.
Say it. Su ye ya na ka. So say it. Ye ya wa ka. They said a certain thing. So then this would be they always say. We were talking about this in advanced Tlingit last night. We're going to get to a point where we talk about some of the finer details of this. There's the yawa ka verb. I'll just use the perfective third person, which is saying like, they said this thing. Then I'm going to tell you their exact words. It's all about like the quotation marks when you're using this yawa ka. You would use a kawanik to say, they told this information. So the ka is all about the specific thing said. The nik is about the information. And then the next one is tan. And the tan is all about speaking. So I spoke with, I spoke to, they spoke to me. May it be mysterious, dark lighting, okay. All right, they always say, and so that's kind of what the na and the ch is doing. But sometimes when we see the ch at the end and we see na in there, if you put if you close a verb root that ends with ah, it's going to change to a. If you close one that's oo, it's going to change to way. So just keep that in mind. It's just another one of these things that goes into your box of rules. And what about ye, e, de? Or was there a question?
Yeah.
How?
Sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Oh, I was going to ask about, so it's helpful because I can see it, how it changes in front of us. What was the other one you said besides ah that changes to a? What was the other one?
Sure, I'll put them right here. So I'll say ah. So like, there may or may not be something in front of it. So I just put this hyphen there. And then I'll kind of go like this to say this is, we're talking about verb roots. And that's going to go to EI. So you're going to see this. Akawadam, it flowed. Or kawada, it flowed. Yakandadain, it's flowing right now. Right? And then the next one is going to be OO, and it's going to change. Oh, this is when you close it. So I'll put this capital C on there. Just means a consonant. So when you close this one, it's going to go to way. Okay, so just like chosaku, I know it.
Cool.
And then you'd say yenachasqueen, I'm getting to know it. Or ya anasqueen, they are getting to know it. Right, and same with aushaqu, they wiped it. Ya anasqueen, they are wiping it. Or there's a song. So keet, like a flock or a pod, not a flock, a pod of killer whales would go ade hasya wagu. They swam over there all together. And this would be a fleet of boats too. So they will travel the same way. But if it's happening right now, Yanagween. So there's a song that says, Ye ya Yanagween he de kite. And so you're hearing it right in there. Other thoughts or questions?
So if I'm coming upon a verb that I'm not familiar with and I'm looking it up, let's say with this one, how would I know that H is not K with the ch on the end?
Yeah,
Or
that's a good question. So like, let's go to our trusty verb dictionary. Oops. Here. Okay, so we go to the verb dictionary. And like, let's go look for yana, let's say yana H, right? So we're gonna look up H. So we can go down here to the clink it to English, scroll down to this little teeny tiny underline K. We expect it to go EE, EI, OO, AA. So we go down and here's K. So you do have K, and these ones would be H if you put the ending on there. This is where it gets tricky. But what we're looking for is we see ya, na, H. So we also know that like this, when they write this, they put ya, whereas would put 0 for the classifier. They also don't use a root marker, and we're using that these days. So you see jiyake, to pay a person for work. Then you see kashake, to be shy of someone. But you're not seeing what we're looking for is ya, ke. And we don't see it. So in this case, we looked here, we don't see ya kh or ya ke in this case. So plan B is we say, oh, maybe it's one of these vowel changers. So we go down here to ka, and we see ya, ka. And then that has all the components that we're sort of looking for. So a lot of times, yeah, it's like putting together the puzzles. You got to match it up with what's going on in there. And then sometimes you will, it's rare, but sometimes you get two verbs that are kind of nearly identical. Then you got to come back in here and put the rest of it together and say, okay, it's got to be this one. It makes sense. Like a person will always pay towards you all. I'm going to speak. Okay, so it's got to be the other one, right? Okay, it's a good question. The other thing we'll start to sort of recognize is these future prefixes. We are going to learn how to assemble these ourselves and then also to spot them. K'wa is always I am going to, and it's ga, ga, cha, and a 0. So those, but these things, it's like this is a bit of, I think it's sound math, is these are going to be one of two things. They'll be k'ka, or let me use the equal sign. And the sort of, the guide here is it's going to be k'ka, unless there's a vowel right before it. Ade is going to trigger it, especially something that's part of the verb. Ye, ke, ya, those will all trigger it. And so will any prefix. If you have any prefix on there, it's got to have a vowel. So that's going to push it to be kakwa. And then we see the kha on there, the ton at the end. Those two combine to be like speaking, talking. So towards you all, I will speak.
Rene,
Ah,
is I'm trying to remember that 3 strikes or 3 from Nora, like that if you have 3 vowels in a row in between consonants, is that why that
well,
one vowel gets pushed out? Or am I thinking of something different?
well, it is that rule. It's the 3 strikes and you're out rules. What they like to call it, Nora and Richard, is if you look from the root marker, once you sort of pull these things out, or if you're putting them together, the 0 doesn't count. That's not a thing because it doesn't make a sound. But these ones make a sound. So you got 3 already. So once you've got 3, something's got to give. And there is, I don't know if anybody's written it yet. I'll have to ask maybe James Crippen, Zeus, if he has anything. There is sort of a hierarchy on how these things contract. Because once you get ga, ga, there's kind of quite a bit of contraction going on here. So what happens, this vowel gets knocked out. If you knock out this vowel in ga, it will switch to a K. That's just what'll happen. And that tells you like the unvoiced, there's a relationship between those two. If you were to knock the vowel out of ga, you're going to get the underline X. So we don't really have that. But what happens is these two, when they encounter each other, qa and kha, they will become kha. Like that's what makes this kha sound. But when you have to contract it even further, now what happens is the sound drops out of this W, right? And so there's also this thing with a W and a U being the same sound, except for one has voice. So you can knock the voice out of it, and then that just converts it to this, and it jumps to the other side. So it does get a little bit complicated. So like the way to start thinking about them is like, this is always first person future, always. It won't change. It has to be kukha or kukwa. But once you learn, now you can say kukwaha, I'm gonna eat it. Kukwagut, I'm gonna go there. Kukwakuch, I'm gonna drive there. I used to tease my brother. I'm kind of a mean older brother. Sometimes I'm usually very nice, but every now and then, and so I'd say, my little brother said, "Can you teach me Tlingit?" I was like, "Watch, you'll never forget this." And I say, "Iyakkwotach," and then I'd slap him, not hard, but I'd slap him in the face, and then I'd say, "Iyakkwotach," and then he'd say, he'd go like that. It's like, see, remember. And so it's like, I'm gonna smack you in the face. But there's lots of nice verbs as well, but they could all be kakwa, right? I'm gonna love you. And so, yeah, that's kind of, and it's up to you, like in terms of like, how do you digest this stuff? We've got charts and other things. I'll show you some charts where you can sort of look at this. Because the other thing you can do is you say, okay, well, here's the kakwa. I know that's one of those future things. Oops, what did I do? I'm hitting the wrong buttons. So you say, I know this is like some kind of future, but I can't really remember if it's like me or you or them. I get a little confused. There is this other text. I think we have probably glanced at it. I don't know if we've taken a close look at it. Maybe let me know. There's a lot to it. It's called the Verbal Structure Handbook. There are versions of this that you can print on 8.5 by 11 paper and fold it in half and carry it around with you. You can also sort of keep it on your device. But if it's got a whole bunch of stuff, like this is a pretty deep manual, but it's really a collection of tables that show you a bunch of condensed information. For example, this is how you could use this, okay? We're going to jump way ahead past a whole bunch of very useful stuff that we can look at some other day. And we're going to jump down to these tables of prefixes. So there is a whole bunch here that could be very confusing. But let's go back to this verb eating. We know that's a 0 classifier. So we can find it right here. If we're going to use a perfective, that's going to be, and so this down here says, with the perfective marker y or the irialis. We're just looking for a perfective right now. So this is table 40 in this book. So one thing that we will figure out is cha for the perfective of eating is going to be a long high stem. So we can put that stem onto all of these. Chua cha, I ate it. Wutu cha, we ate it. Yicha, oops, it's going to be iyacha. Iyacha, you ate it. Yicha, y'all ate it. Wuduacha, it was eaten. Uwacha, they ate it. So you can look this stuff right up. Once you see that sort of that, and there's a bunch of stuff you're going to learn how to do. And these tables are like, they're shortcuts to get you there while you're figuring out how to sort of memorize these different components that are in there. Same with, and what this capital C is consonant. Doesn't matter which one. That could be an S, an L, a DL, a DZ, an SH, or a J, for example. So here's this classifier plus I, like siku, right? So that's also going to be long and high. Chwasaku, so we change it to an S. Watusaku, yisaku, yisaku, wadudzaku, sorry. And in this case, it does not really show you what happens when you put the A on here, but you get ausaku. But it's a really good starting point to sort of get you there. And you could look these up. So these, and this would show you, this is ausaku right there. So, but you can also, if there's something on there, like, for example, to succeed, right? So to succeed is you're going to get glaq. It's going to be long and low if it already happened. You're going to get this classifier right here, but you're also going to get ya. So this is capital C, capital V. It says a consonant and a vowel. Doesn't matter which one. It's still going to follow the same sets of rules. Yahwadlaq, I succeeded. Yao to wadlaq, we succeeded. Yidlaq, you succeeded. Ya yidlaq, you all succeeded. Yao do wadlaq, people succeeded. And a yawadlaq, they succeeded. So like all, these things are there. It takes a while to sort of decipher. It's not everybody's bag of chips, but I think I was very excited when this came out. I think he came to a conference in Yakutat, showed it to me. I was like, what? Best. And so I'll just show you just one more, and then we'll sort of move back to our little translation exercise. These are all your futures, right? And so first person singular, I, we, you, y'all, someone, they, and then also going down with again, the prefix. So going back, I'm gonna eat. I would say kakacha, gachtucha, we're gonna eat. Gagicha. These two are both second person, guggi and kuki. They follow the same rule as this one, where it should be guggi, unless there's a vowel that's gonna push it to change to contract, right? Gachicha, you're gonna eat it. Or y'all are gonna.
Renee,
Oh,
I'm sorry. I forget why those three at the very top with first singular. I mean, you just talked about it. What I thought those were all just a contraction, but they are like different things based on. I just thought, oh, we just contracted, but that's not real. Is
I
that
would-
meaning all the same thing, or are those like three different versions for some other reason?
my recommendation is ignore the second one for now. Don't
Okay,
even worry
all
about it. I would. I
Okay.
don't even list it in the stuff that I teach. You know. But here's the rule: it should be kukha, unless there's some vowel before it that's going to trigger contraction. Ade, ye, ke, any of those that tend to just, like, there's certain things that end with vowels that tend to just suction right onto the verb. It's not part of the verb, but it sure sounds like it, which is why when you ask, you know, speakers a long time ago, how do you write yan agut? They'd write it as yan and then agut. That's how they would write it, because that's how it sounds when you say it. But it's just because, you know, the word separation is really interesting in Tlingit because it's not really about the sound, it's about the function. So we can teach folks like, here's this thing and that thing is what they're doing.
Ganesh Chish, sorry you said that and it already left my brain.
I mean, yeah, it's complicated stuff, right? So gachicha, y'all are gonna eat it. Gachticha, it's gonna be eaten. And in this case, you'd say akwacha. Right, and then we're going to learn a couple rules with this future. We'll get there. For now, it's right here in this chart. You could like look the stuff up. It does have this capital C, which can be a little wild, right? So you could say, I would say, kakasaku, I'm gonna know it. Gachtusaku, we're gonna know it. Gachisaku, you're going to know it. Gachisaku, y'all are gonna know it. Gachdus, well, this one goes over here. Gachdusku, it will be known. Aguchsaku, they will know it. And then you can say hasaguchsaku. That doesn't change at all. Just put hasaguchsaku. So the parts are here, and we're gonna learn how to put them together.
And thank you for doing this because I just wanted that CA represents like na, ga.
Oh, these are only
Oh, yeah, like that. All of those classify, right?
yeah.
Okay, that end with A.
Yeah. So
Okay.
because it's all the futures, they can only be minus I. So your options here, da, sa, sha, and sha. Those are your four options. Because what gets kind of wild is if it's plus D, so if it's any gle or z or stuff like that, j, it's only going to be the consonant. So that gets kind of wild. So for example, atkhwajikain, I was jumping around. So you'd say atkukashkain. So that's just going to be shh. That is going to be the classifier. And you will get ones that are like that, right? Which in you it's just the letter L. That's the whole classifier, but it's right here. Okay. Handy dandy stuff. I'll put it up on the page. Knock yourself out. If you got questions about that stuff, let me know. It's fun stuff. It is brain tangling territory for sure, but it will all make sense. It will all make sense someday. Then you'll be on this using it as a guide, and then you'll just put it in the archives. Like, I remember when I needed the guide. Man, I could do it all now in my brain. Okay. Back to the translation at hand. Okay, so the other thing we can do is like, I would merge all these together at the bottom. Oops, that's not what I did. And I would say a person always says, I am going to speak to all. Right, so this is the bottom line for me is where I sort of reassemble it, right? So this all right here is the translation zone. It's like like if you cross the border from the United States into Canada, you leave the United States, and then you're not in Canada yet for like 20 miles or something. This is like that in-between zone. And this is where you folks are going to reside for a while, and maybe for a long, long time, until you could sort of really wake up that Tlingit part of your brain and just really fully, you can just jump between them. That's really fun. Okay. So there's the first line. Going back up. We succeeded. Out to Wadlaq. Line number 2. Can somebody read this for us?
Khat aya
Oh,
kha yuk tangi hin yech kenaku kha yach yeti kha tin.
goodness, sheesh. And what kinds of things do we recognize here?
Man, language, water going is what I got.
Yeah. So there's, well, in this case, so like a couple of things, like it is hard to tell the difference between ka and ka. Those are two homonyms that I would say are separate things. One of them is a man, and then one of them is a person. It's really hard to tell. This is one area where Tlingit does have a definitive gender lean. A lot like English, right? When they say, fireman, but sometimes that is male leaning, especially. And Tlingit, like it could go either way. I see them as separate words. But if you see the low tone version, that could also be one thing or the other. So with the low tone version, if it's attached to a noun that makes sense and it's not possessed, right? So for example, this would be these are two different things. I should make this a little bigger, sorry. So these are two different things because these two kas are actually different, right? So now we're getting to a couple different ones, right? So we got ka and ka. Those are both high tone, but they're different. You just got to get them from context. English has lots of homonyms. Like which two is it? It's 2, right? Okay. So what do you think might be the difference between these two? Ka-kate, ka-kate.
A male dog and a person's dog.
So in this case, when we line it up next to a noun, we know whether this is the possessive pronoun because it triggers the possessive marker, right? And so like they're a matching set, sort of. This one is an adjective to say a male. So we see here the possessive marker, so that would be a person's language, speech, or words. Kind of depends on how we'll sort of peel those things through as we go. So now we'll kind of go through here again.
Kune is the high tone taken away because it's now considered like an adjective and connected to those words? Wasn't it a high tone originally?
Okay, yeah. So this goes through like the same thing where like you have khat and wa'eh, right? And huh, right? We can list a whole bunch of them for once. Huh and hus. We'll just start with those 4, right? And so these 4, they all have high tones. When a pronoun has high tones, that tells you it's the independent version. It's that one you say like me, you, them, them all. That's all. It's not attached to anything. Adu sawe, khataya. Right? You can't use it for a verb. You can't use it to link anything together. It's got to sit on its own. But they do all have, oh, we'll put, I guess I need one more category. So we'll put ka over here. So this is a person. So what's the possessive form of khat?
Akh,
Akh. What's the possessive form of wa'eh? Eh. What's the possessive form of hu? Duh. What's the possessive form of has?
Astu.
Hasdu. And what's the possessive form of ka?
Ka.
Ka, with the low tone. So all of these possessive and the subject and the object, none of them have high tones. And so for some of them, there's this sort of distinctive switch. Khat to akh, wa'eh, eh, hu, du, has, hasdu, ka, ka. That goes through the least of the switches, right? So that's what's going on here and why it's going, why there's a low tone, because it is that possessive one. So in this case, I would say, oops, let me get rid of this. A person's language, speech, word. And it kind of depends. Like maybe we might list out a few options as we go through with the translation. We can come back to the bottom when we kind of reformat it into English, and then we'll go from there.
Could that also translate as one's language? Or does it have to be person in there?
I would probably say person, but it depends. Like for some of them, like I'd say ka kla yagi. That's how I'd say Mother's Day. It just means a mother, not a person. You can say a person's mother or a mother. But yeah, one, I would probably say a person in most cases. Okay, hin yich.
That's some kind of in. It's not yick. That's the one that I thought of first, but
Oh,
so,
yeah.
why
kind-
can't it be heen yik with on the end and contracted?
oh, maybe you're right.
Yes, so that is what's going on. So you do have hin yik, but if it's repetitive, it'll switch to yich, right? And so there's some different, it gets interesting, and there's a few of them that do this, like talk is the bottom of a cavity, take is behind something. That K is often there, but if you put a suffix on there, like especially this one, it'll just erase that K, it'll go away. So hin yich works really well for like a boat going along the water, or it implies in the water and also in motion. So we'll say in the water. And this is in the shallow part of the water, either like something that floats along the surface like a boat, or a person who's not in the deep waters.
So K would be like above, right? And not good moving forward. And then is that the ka that would be the man?
A person.
Or would it be?
I would still go back to person for this one, which is always
Okay.
interesting, but yeah, so you could say yanagut, kanagut, yenagut. And the difference would be yanagut is going along, kanagut is going upwards, yenagut is going downwards. But in this case, like we don't have to, we could sort of, it might be something where we say, and this is interesting too, because we have verb noun, right? So you could say, a lot of times you might end up with sort of like one of these things sometimes, but I think this works just fine. And so when you have these sort of right in a row, like you could have a walking dog, right? So it becomes the noun that's doing the verb. So I would say, well, for this one, we want to sort of see the parts. K, na, 0, 0. Good. 2 zeros in a row. There's the person. Third person's always unmarked. There's the classifier. It's a 0 because it's in this process of happening. So it can't be, you can't put the I in there. Person walking, a walking person, right? Again, like sort of like we're chunking this through, we'll go through and reassemble. Show the parts in here. What about Yahyati?
It's like that.
And then, well, these are, you don't have to do anything with these. Kekatin.
With a hook.
So then, translators, how would you rewrite this?
A person's speech is like a person walking in the water with a gaff hook.
Yeah, and so you see, there's a little bit of flexibility here, because you could say, "Kayuch atungi, hin yich kenakut ka." But I think you want to have, like you would think maybe, why wouldn't the kechatin be with the person? I think because it's once it starts to get too complicated, you have to insert the verb to show that it's a metaphor. It's starting to get a little bit too long, right? Like English will do this too. Like if you start to put too many things in, it's going to want you to break it into a couple sentences or something, or add a semicolon. So so this still pushes into the metaphor, which is really because like you're not talking with a gaff hook, right? Maybe you are. Okay. Okay. Can I get a reader? Do one more, take a break.
Hin wang uak agi khat ayu du ek ay a cut el hash.
Sheesh. And what do we see here? Anything we recognize? And we'll go through the pushing into these categories too. Chunking.
I see, is it salmon? Chat, are you like salmon out yonder, over yonder way? Are you? And
There. Oh,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Just heen water.
Yeah. And they're
And their hook, their gaff hook.
yeah. What?
On it, something about is caught. It's either an instrumental CH or an every time CH.
Okay. 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 So we got a few chunky pieces in here, right? So we're gonna go. Let me do this part of the job. In one. And then we're gonna go yeah, 0, yeah. Cook, I, and then hard. Yeah. Oops. Yeah. Yeah. Make room for that big old verb. Okay. Okay. So as we go through, and now we might. So anybody know what the one part is? Let me find, I got this illustration, let me find it. I think it's under salmon. Okay, I'll have to show you the picture a little later. I'm not finding it. Okay, shucks. Okay, well, so especially thinking of a river, you've got, there's a few different parts to the river that are really important, especially from the perspective of a human. Like, so a person who goes up to the river, hin yach. So I'm going to write these down. So hin yach. What this one is going to be is sort of, I'll say, near the riverbank, right? So this would be hin yach kukwagut, or hin yach de kukwagut. I'm going to go up to the edge of the river, right? And so especially like if there's a trail that follows the river, that would go hin yach. You could say chayach, and that's getting to that point where the land meets the water. But so there's hin yach. Then we already had hin yik in this case, and we'll say in the water, and it's kind of shallow, or it's floating. But there is another one, especially once you're in the river, and especially if you're hin tag, like a fish would be, hin one would be the water side of the riverbank, right? And so that's really important once we start talking about fish. There is a phrase, where they would say, I've already begun biting the riverbank. And that's how your elders long time ago would tell you, like, I'm not going to be around much longer. It was a very flowery way for them to say that. It's like a salmon bites, because the way it's explained to us by Johach, is that a salmon bites the riverbank to encode the location that they'll then put to their little babies, so they know when to come back. And when they do that right before they lay their eggs, and then they go die, right? So it's kind of a pretty important saying. But so now we've got hin one. And so with this underline X in probably both cases, you could argue that it's sometimes along. It could be repeatedly coming back to, but it works really well for like along. So we might say along the, I don't know how to say, can you say that in English? Like the riverbank could be either side, right? Could be the land side or the water side. Is there a way to talk?
Nay,
What's that?
Ka'une is one related to Yun, which is the water side of the shore.
It's a good theory. It's a good theory. One is, it's also the edge, like jiwan is the edge of your hand. Okay.
Because I've heard heen a day before, and that's like the mouth of the river, mouth of
Yeah.
the lake, or is that the mouth of the river?
That works as well. So a body of water does have a mouth, and that's where you kind of, when you break the surface of the water, you're breaking the mouth of the water.
So, Hune, I have a question. One of the sentences I wrote in the past for this past weekend was to walk on the river, the Tananahin. So I said Tananahin Ka, because I wanted it, because it's, what did I find? Woodtree Ik.
Yeah.
So
Heen.
would you say Ka then?
Yeah, because I had fun with that one when I went to Kotzebue and we were driving on the river. And I just kept saying, we would the tikihin kach. And it would be kach, because then it's on. Yeah. And I was amazed. Even I've walked on rivers before. There's a whole road. We drove all the way down. Okay. We got to get to the end here. So we do have uwakuk is that's what the verb is here on its own. Or it's changing to uwakuki. Yeah, I'll probably write that just like that. But any ideas for that?
Third person preterite possessed by the fish.
Well, in this case, you've got a verb. Kak. So we'll go dive in for this one. So we're going to go for ak is what we're going to look for. So when we go to here, E, E, O, A, right? And then as far as goes N, T, S, SH, K, swim underwater, singular subject. We have and that's what we have. We have the zero classifier, ak. This is how a fish swims. A person can swim like this as well, I think, but they're swimming underwater. It's really what it's saying, like going completely underwater and swimming.
Sounds like the word for apple.
Oh, I guess you have if an apple could swim underwater.
Oh.
So what you have here, you can have verb I, noun, and you'll get the verb, the noun that does the verb. So just like we had a person walking, a fish that swam up to it. And it's kind of built into the verb. Like you could say, would be it went there. Is it made it there. So those things do get signaled in the verb. And so along the riverbank, a swimming or a salmon, we'll ignore ayu for now. Dukech ayi. There. Yeah. Hook on it. Maybe arriving. This is a pretty unusual verb. What it means is their mouth drifts to it. But you can have, like anyashahash, that this verb is in his name. You could have at wushahashihit, the house that drifted ashore. Ade wushahash, it drifted over there. It means to drift on the water, right? And it kind of depends on how it's being used, but it could be floating or it could be drifting. Nashash adi is floating driftwood.
We'll be able to download these slides later, right?
Yeah. So I'll put this up as a PDF, and I'll also tell you where it's coming from. And we'll also start sort of really, this is from a book of speeches, and we're going to start diving into it. And then also start doing we'll step out too and do some conversational stuff it gets pretty intense in terms of meaning and metaphor all smushing together. Okay, we're going to take our break, but first we got to reassemble this thing. Once we see all these pieces, how would this come together? And Tani.
Can I cheat?
Are you looking in the book?
Now, after you said that.
Dang it, I should never give away the answer.
Got it now.
So does the there Gaffuk refer to the person in the previous? Sentence?
Yeah, and Tlingit loves to do this. Like once it tells you something, once you see duh, you just assume it's probably that person, unless they specify. And usually, technically, a salmon wouldn't be duh, it would be And now we're going to sort of rearrange the word order, maybe. I don't know.
So a salmon that swam along the riverbank?
Its mouth always floats to the gaff hook and arrives there. It always gets hooked.
It's
Or maybe onto the gaff hook.
oh yeah. So now as we go back here and start to assemble this, put it together, gotten pretty far. Oh, we got halfway. Yeah. So we got to take a break. We got some other stuff to do. You folks want to finish it? You want to go high speed mode? What do you want to do?
Something else for a bit.
Okay, we'll come back.
Are we gonna do songs next Thursday or next week?
We're supposed to do songs today. Dang it.
I know, I didn't want to interrupt. I did bring some songs too that I can share with everyone for next time, maybe next Tuesday or something.
Yeah, and there are a couple things before we take our break. The Tlingit communities are all interconnected. right? They are interconnected. And so when there's tragedy in a community, we tend to feel it because we have friends and relatives all over. And so there was the loss of a young person who's a relative of my children's clan and my wife's clan and of the Dakawidi. And I just want to acknowledge the loss in the community of Carcross that happened recently. And also today, the discovery of even more children at boarding schools. And so it might be good to just push it back, because when we bring our songs out, we tend to have a lot of joy, which is good. And we have songs for everything. Nora Dowenhauer once told me, you could tell the entire Tlingit history through our songs if you know them. And so it is important, but it might make sense. It's good that I forgot, right? It's not good, but it's fitting. Because one of the things I really appreciate doing work in the community of Deislin is like when something happens, the people acknowledge it. And it's a way that we all used to live. And I think sometimes lives get so busy that people feel like they can't sort of stop. But I remember even like I was in Deislin teaching one time, and unfortunately somebody capsized in the lake and they never found them. And because someone had drowned in the lake, like nobody was fishing, like nobody in the entire community, like everybody stopped. And this was someone that wasn't even from the community. It was a tourist who had an accident, and and they unfortunately were both lost, and they found them. But then sometimes it's good to sort of know those things and to just sort of, we can always keep working on the language and keep studying stuff, but then sometimes we hold back on some of the things that are more fun and that bring out joy, because you don't want to do that when someone else is suffering. But when we come back, like we're going to spend some time with this other text. It's called Hatu Nagu Yis. And this is the first speech that's listed in there. And I think it sets the tone for the whole book. And there's some big concepts that we're going to find in there that I think are important, because if someone asks you to use the language for something ceremonial, you're expected to do some of these bigger things. And then you'll have these things in your toolbox in case that situation comes up and you find yourself in a space where you might need to tie it to a story or tie it to a metaphor or tie it to a parable. And these things are apparent throughout the language all the time. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, just quickly. Last week you asked us to do a couple sentences on what we did over the weekend. We could have some time to
Do that when we
share
come back.
those. Cool.
That'll be fun. Okay, take 5 and come back. Sheesh. Walpuchin aya yuchagachtil art wasa atbune atat aya we sandek ak shui. Wallisaku we sandek ak aya kekigi dechigi naskigi deket. Takunyaki kijiniki sandik atsku akasandi. Dekat at sandik ak sandik asku kasandi sandik ak shui. Yeawe yuchesak. Gol acho achakudi de awe yuchas adat. Achataya yeawe achi auchitu. Sunday katsku one qanins saku yiki. Sunday one qanins wursa yiki. Khayat atsu. Kijk yejene dech yejene nask hadakun kitchen. Yeawe. Khan kanani kwasa atpuni.
So I don't know, I know you were talking about Saturday, and I was wondering because in the dictionary that you're working on and in Tlingit Chinaksa, they have different days for names for Sunday, and I was wondering what that was all about.
Yeah, what do they
And
have?
Saturday too,
Let's go take a look.
because I saw Ka Dulsek Yagi.
day people rest. And then Sunday is just a Lingish version of Sunday.
Yeah. And then what's the difference too with Saguya Gi?
Sakuyiki is fun day.
Okay.
And then Sunday Katsku is adolescent Sunday.
Geez.
Or Little Sunday could be other one. So yeah, so you get different, and you also get different names of the months depending on where you go. And that's probably the next step for the dictionary, is putting all the months in there and then continuing to find where some of these variants that are good to include. And then like for some of them, I don't know if it's a dialect thing. Like I don't know, like I heard from Yakutat, a speaker say, I think he said, so it's a one work day. So that's how he did the weekdays. And so it could sort of come about because different speakers thought about it in different ways. And these are conversations we're all having and should be engaging in. It's like, what are the differences? Why? And sometimes it's not clear to me. And so I say, okay, just here's the options. Go listen. So like, for example, a day could be yucky, yegi, yagi. So just listen to how speakers are saying it where you're from. And if you don't, then maybe just sort of Cake and Teslin tend to be yagi. A lot of other places tend to be yagi, with a few places being yucky, but I haven't sort of nailed down any geographical reason for it.
I was trying to figure out what it would be for weekend, and I came up with Sunday shu, but it sounds like you were saying shui.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there a difference between doing it those ways?
No, they're both the end of something. Shui is like out on the edge of a dock or something. So it's just, I can't remember. I think we're asking speakers and we tried shu and they came back with shui. Those are pretty similar concepts though. But there's a whole bunch to look at with shu as well, which maybe we'll do a deep dive on that another day, if I remember, which I probably will. Any other questions or thoughts? And we'll get into what you folks came up with. Okay. Adisa shukwa yukakwatan.
Yeah.
Welcome, Chish.
Shuka Hwatu Kia Sunday Shu We Sit Ka Kach Kana A Shkashnigi Yiguat Gune Kachshahit Klesh Uk Yeti Kua Klesh Kwasaku Wasa Yuduasak essay.
Wow. What? Skunis Kadishhiti Kuk. Gutliwe. Akish Kashni Kanachoi Sitka Kanach in the Aini. Ye owa Kawa A Gwashkiwe.
Sit Ka Kach Kana A Klesh Kwasaku We Yata Kana A.
Akak Kwashi.
Glacier Bay history.
Yata Yakukatach.
So I tried to say, I read Hashuka, the Glacier Bay history stories, and I started writing an essay. It's not, but I called the essay Yigawat short book. And then I said, it's not a book. However, I don't know the word for essay.
Yeah, that's a great question. Like you could say, you might say something like so it doesn't, in that way, it's sort of, it's kind of open-ended, right? So it's like away would be after that. So you could say aqa away, which would be sort of like just sometime after that. Or itdach away would be following that. You go say itnach, they're kind of the same thing. And then you could also say achaway. So there are different ways to tie these different concepts together. And so maybe I'll jot some of them down. But sort of like aqa away is just sort of like, and then this other thing happened, and they're not really tied together. It's just sort of moving us through a narrative. Itch or itdach is really like after this thing, this other thing. So it's a little bit more sequencing, right? It's sort of like, well, this thing happened, and then this other thing happened, and then this other thing happened. And then it sort of ties this movement, this thing, to the other thing a little bit. Then you could say achaway, which would really be because of that. And then that's another way to really closely tie those things together. So in the course of narrative, whether that's telling a story or sort of just explaining some things, and it's all, a lot of it is storytelling. What'd you do this weekend? That's all storytelling. So then you could say, if you had, you know, ja ach dana yo adachuziki tlikatyete away ye wutin achwe tlana achia yidet kanachwe achitya nuaha. That could be a story. Like I got pants with holes in the pockets and the money fell out all over the place. That's what, because of that, I got no money and I'm hungry. So that could be like, that could be a narrative, but that would be an ach away thing, right? So it's really like cause and effect. Itdach, sequence, aqa away, just generally next thing. And there is one other, which is in the context of like sometimes bigger stories, wananis away at some point. And that's how you do like you're jumping to a whole other like scene, basically. Okay.
Hune, could you type Wana niece away in the chat?
Yeah, I'll put them on the screen and then I'll copy them into the chat. I'll put them in there now.
Khataya, shkashnigi away. Kliatke, yasandik ak shui. Kunach hat dot at kudziti. Kijin yakki gun skoon klein shatu chadletu. Sunday kiatsku glate kajuha chasha kagligas. Eagle crest away. Shea de hain yan chachwa gazch. Chat tu chatan aklein sium aklein sim hakade aquagate. Sim dak satanch. Sim dak satanch. Aka duch sech yagi at wuduacha. Klech yagi. Klech yagi. To shade hain skoon klein shatu chadlitum. Ach aya yagi chat woody wait. Which way?
Okay. Igoy when Kanins Kanachis you darkness tan showway Shashaki Yanish Nekrawit the cutway played. Klidzi to Nachaway. Kach was Jaji Kach. Klidzi at the ski. Yeah, well.
Glate, glate, Linux. Yeah, yachyati. It was really sticky. I just kind of said it was like sweets, but I don't know how to say sticky. So, quick question. I kind of moderated a word I found. I found the word for skateboard, but I wanted to say snowboard, but so I just said snow skateboard. Was that, did you catch that, or?
Yeah, I put it together after hearing, once I heard snow, and then, you know, the other parts sort of got there. And those are some things like jaji is skis. And then, and so what's the word for skateboard again? Where'd you find that?
Skateboard. I found it in your dictionary. So the word for skateboard, Sunday, let's go glade. Kajuha. And then I just put glade in front.
Yeah, so so when we look at this, what did we come up with? We had I think it would be so I think so the part is a board. Kajucha is wheels. It has to do with the spinning wheels. So that's where you get like the wheelie board or whatever. Like kajucha on its own is usually like a wheelbarrow. And you say yakanajuch, like it's spinning, whatever the thing is. We use that for like the tape is rolling, even though it's all digital now, right? But that's from the old school, like they would tell each other that when the reels were moving or the tapes, you know. So the kajucha I think works. And then you've got jaji, which is, oops, I think I got the ta wrong. Then I got the J wrong, whatever. So jaji would be board snowshoes. So kakashtiti is a surfboard because it's like riding the waves. And so that's kind of close. But and so what's interesting is what we come up with, because there's also no verb for skating and for skiing. And so what I was sort of proposing was you'd have subject, and then I was using S plus D, and then that's what I was using, and just put ski on there for skiing. And then, oops, it would be key actually. Let me do that again, because this was how I'm trying to be maybe too clever for my own good. So then you've got so you'd say atchwadziki, and there's no key verb root as far as I could find. So it seems like it's available. I don't know how we do this stuff now. But if you said atchwadziki, that works. But if you say anything with a minus I, it turns into ski. Atgach to ski, right? And then it works because the word skiing is built in there. And then you could do the same thing, change key to Kate. And I think you could have ice skating. It's kind of cheating. It's certainly just, but it's borrowing from English, you know, because people would say gach to Zoom, or they'd say gach to Skype, like long time, you know, way back 3 years ago or whatever. So those are options, because the kajucha is the wheel, so it's spinning. The jaji is related to the snowshoe because there's one on each foot. But so I do think it should be a ta. Kakashtit is rolling in the waves. So you got to kind of have waves for that one to work. but maybe we could say gleit. Oh, you know what you could say? There's this other verb, yan hit, which is for a canoe to really be gliding through the water. Like if everybody's paddling and that canoe's just really going, that's the verb. So you could, that would work. And I think you would have yanashiti. So you have gleit, kach, we'll bring that up to the words committee. Let's see, there's not really a words committee. We keep threatening to make one, and we need one. But I'll bounce it around some folks that I trust. Some people just shoot it down, and you know I love them. There was one elder, she was so fun to work with. But if you ever asked her for stuff like this, like how you say skis, she'd say get that way. It's not a thing. Like, all right. So, but there are some who like to think of this stuff. They sit around like Gay had always come find me and think of new things that tell me new things he thought of. Sheesh. So that would be a gliding. It's kind of gliding on the snow. Kind of what you're trying to do. And that's where hitta comes from. It's the one that glides, a knife. Art, yag, el chishuhan, khataya, khatwutlit ich, zoom, gant, aya, khatu, a hitch. Zoom threw me outside, so I'm back. We came back, we returned. So we left off with, we were sharing sentences. Yishkaku, Wilhundak Hiti, Yigud, Ya Yishukwa, Yadik 18. Yaksha. Gulchish. Adu Itzako Ahaya Yadetko.
Yes, hataya. Fairbanks de Kwati de Kwa de Ken Klate Woodlan Ka Kuwak E Tenana Hinka Woodkli Ik E Ka Wagut Ach Kusk Ich A Yitka Ach Dach Khan Kau no Kwasekhat Effective Instruction Conference at Kwasi Ach Zoom Saguyagi Kasande Yuhas Auchle at Ka Shutu Khatu. So I'll translate since I struggled. So I traveled to Fairbanks. I flew there. The snow was deep and it was nice out. So the sentence I've been talking about, so I walked on the frozen Tanana River. I pulled my granddaughter on the sled. And then I listened to the I didn't know how to really say attended. So I said I listened to the effective instruction conference on Zoom Saturday and Sunday. They spoke and I learned. Ganeshish.
Okay, yeah, and like so, wushkanach uda'at is like to come together. So you could say wushkanach uda'at. What happened? Oh, okay. I thought I froze again. Wushkanach uda'at, like the old screen went blank. And so that could work for like people gathered, and so we can use that. I think here I'll show you folks where to find this stuff. So we go to like the ot verb for like plural peoples to move around. This is the plural form of gut. And so we're going to go down, we see appoint, lead them, go on foot, and we'll sort of scroll around, go to the bathroom, attack, And then we've got gather. Now, I have heard both of these, wush kanach and wush chut. I would also say I think speakers tend to prefer one over the other, but I haven't heard if there's really a difference between them. I say it like this because that's how I first learned it from Nora, but I also will sometimes say it like this when I'm around other speakers who say, this way sounds weird. But I think either one, if you have a speaker that prefers one, and maybe we'll figure out what the difference might be between the two. So you could have something like this. So you do have a perfective. So wush kadnach wututa'at. We gathered together. But I think you could also say wush kadnach auda'at, which would be the motion verbs do weird things with fourth person, but that would be people gathered together. Auda'at. And so you could say, you could put kashuk in front of it, maybe. So kashuk wush kanach auda'ati. It was an electronic get together. The other thing you could say is wush kanach auda'ati. Oh, sorry, it should be, no, that's correct, auda'ati. Ichtideyi yikt. So on the internet. So that's another way you could say it. And then if they prefer chut, it's very similar. So you just say wush chut, but you'll see it's short. Wutuda'at. So you'd have wush chut auda'at. So again, that would be people gathered together. So that's what would change. Sheesh. Ukecha. Anyone else? We could do more. We could do more on Thursday too. We could see if anyone...
Wash yayunaka. I could say a thing, I guess. Could
Oh.
try. Hey, I don't know if this is right. So, and I know you don't take Tlingit saris, but maybe just take my sari anyway. Kook, like square, wok jake, like I don't know, staring. TV hatich. Ka at let's see, ayus ka kwacha. So like square eyes at the TV and cooking all the things and eating all the things. Sorry.
Okay. Ashtekatat chosei, ashtekatat chocha. Okay. We did, I think this was the last summer that we were working actively in Sitka, pre-pandemic, summer before the pandemic, I believe it was. We were in Sitka working with some of the elders. Ahitli is the word for, the old word for like a movie theater. And so it's a really interesting word because it means a scary board. I don't know. I think the people saw it and they got kind of scared of the whole thing. So we just adopted that structure. So ahitli, and then so hukitli is what we're using for television. I was trying to get it out of the dictionary, but it's not. Computer's gone wonky. Wonky husati.
Was kook wok jake close? Square eyes, like staring square.
I guess you could say walk, that the eyes look like boxes. That might and then yeah, so staring at something. There's another like whole set of verbs. So like the Latin verb is what I would typically use for watching television because you're just kind of watching it. I think there's a verb yaudza'a, which means to really look at something and kind of inspect it. And then there's another one which is kutis, but that's like looking for something, like you're looking and you're trying to spot something. So those are very similar things. And then you got like ausatin or chwasatin, but that means to catch sight of something. And then you have chatin or ayatin, which is to see something, but it's not a specific thing. So they are very similar. And so it's sort of like when we start to learn more and more Tlingit, we start to get into these ones where like there's these like multiple ways to say it, and they're just a little bit different, you know, like saying a specific thing, giving information, speaking. Those are the three main ways that you could sort of do that kind of thing. And then this is similar, where you could sort of, you could look at something, I looked at it. You could watch it, you can stare at it, and then sort of like inspect it, and then you can also sort of look for something. Like, so I'm sitting here, I'm outside looking for my dog. You could say, I was looking for my dog. So yeah, there's, when we get into some of those, it's fun. I'd say just go for it, and then we could sort of adjust them as we talk.
I tried to add the ch sound to 14 just because of it. I don't know what yeah. I just tried to mix it together.
Yeah, because you could have like staring at the other way you could do some of those things is you could say, this thing, a jidach, this other thing. And what that does is like, this thing gave this thing to me. Like, for example, I'm tired from working. My job specifically. My job made me tired. And so sometimes that ajidach, it's like it literally hands it to you. So it's pretty interesting. Like I learned that one from George Davis. I can't remember. I was saying like, I'm tired from hiking or sledding or something like that. And he gave us that construction.
Yeesh.
Ah. Well, goodness.
Honey, did you say, I think Yando Ain, we had one student ask TV and he said, Kleik Wak, one eye.
Oh.
One eye. And I don't know if he had gotten that from his grandfather, but anyway, he was like, it looks like an eye, so they called it Kleik Wak.
Hey, and there's quite a few things that probably have 2 or 3 different names, and so it's kind of fun. Okay. Yeah, and we used to always hear TV. And then we get into these philosophical things because it's like TV kachoechosatin. I saw it on the TV. But then we'd say, well, wouldn't it be yach because it's on the face of the TV? And they're like, yeah, it would be. And then we'd say, well, how do you say I saw it on TV? And they'd switch right back to kach. So we're like, okay, let's just go with that because that's what they keep, you know, because we're overthinking it in terms of like, well, this is this, so then that must be that. And then when you hear a speaker, then they're like, okay, that's fine. Kach is kach, whatever. Okay. Yek gnus chish yuhan wukecha wush ye wushkach tustin dachun yegi. See you on Thursday. Bring some sentences to share if you didn't already. We'll do songs next Tuesday. I'll remember. I'll bring a drum. I'll do all the things. And I'll probably be here. I took the room back, but now nobody's in the room. It's all good. Chish.
Une, I intended to come out to campus for class, but life got complicated.
It happens. I forgot the main microphone, so I don't even have anything. I was trying this little owl thing from my other class. It's kind of fun. But it like looks around at people somehow, but we'll try it. And we'll try and, I don't know. My idea was we'd all start sitting in a circle too, but we'll see how it goes. But the TV and stuff is over here. So maybe I'll keep that other room. Maybe I'll take all the rooms because there's only 2 classes here, I think, in the evening. So maybe we'll all sit in different rooms. I don't know.
Une, next week, plain class, big class.
Oh yeah, we'll do that. I'll talk to Ida, and we'll do it probably on. What did we do? We shifted the days, right? Because they're
Wednesday.
Yeah, so we'll probably do a Wednesday super class. So we'll do. That'll probably be a good time to work on George Davis's collection of speeches. The one from Angoon. You get the whole box of wisdom reference in its full glory. It'll be fun. Okay. You okay? I'm gonna cheese you, huh?
Okay.
Hun,
Let's cheese.
before you go, could I chat with you for a second, like
Yeah.
with the recording off?
Yeah.